And quickly, I've got to get your comments on what's happening between Senator John McCain and a few other senators and the president. John McCain was on the Today Show this morning. He was asked, Mark, about Susan Rice and his already, I guess, he's firing the first salvo that he would stand in the way of her being Secretary of State. And he was asked about Condoleezza Rice and supporting her during obvious controversial times. Let's play it.
You said opponents of Condoleezza Rice were expressing sour grapes after an election loss. Why is this different?
Because every intelligence agency in the world, including the British, believed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. That was it's an entirely different situation. 4 Americans died that didn't have to die.
So, Mark, the double standard, at least as some have alleged here, Senator McCain does not see it.
Well, and this goes to the whole point that this, Tamron, is a lot more about personal than the professional. This goes back to a grudge, obviously, that John McCain has had with President Obama since their 2008 presidential election. And you did mention that clip of Condoleezza Rice. It's worth noting that not only were there WMD intelligence failures in the Bush administration, but of course there was the intelligence failure on the memo that President Bush ended up getting on Osama bin Laden determined to strike the United States.
Right.
And Condoleezza Rice was national security advisor. So under John McCain's own logic, Condoleezza Rice should have received a lot of very tough questions in her confirmation hearing for Secretary of State.
And Governor Rendell, I can't remember what show it was on. It was one of our programs, however. Someone brought up the point that you have Senator McCain questioning the intellect or the ability of Susan Rice to carry out a job when the quote was, he brought the world Sarah Palin.
Right. Well, that's true, too. But the fundamental point that we've got to never lose focus on is that Susan Rice had nothing to do with what happened in Benghazi vis-a-vis the ambassador and the 3 other Americans who were killed. She had no role in that. She wasn't in the decision-making process. It is why this is so totally unfair. And as the president said, it's just an attempt to besmirch the reputation of someone who has served this country very, very well. And by the way, the Republicans, don't lose sight of, guys, the country's facing huge challenges. We can't be fighting over this stuff when we've got to work together to deal with our debt problem, our deficit problem, our investment problem, all of those things. It's just such a distraction. It's really tragic to see it.
But Nia, Malika, as you know, there are, though, legitimate questions that the president says he wants answers to as well here. But as he pointed out yesterday, for those who believe Susan Rice is an easy target, come to him. And it's been posed to Senator McCain as well as Senator Collins and others, the failure, if there was one, by the CIA and questions about the information given to Susan Rice. I find that they skirt around that. But the other issue that was brought up regarding this meeting that was supposed to take place yesterday, or briefing, that Senator McCain missed because he said it was a scheduling issue. There was a scheduling error, but at the same time he was holding a news conference. This adds to the notion that this is about politics, even though he and his staff indicate there was a scheduling error as to why he would miss a briefing on Benghazi and instead be holding a news conference.
You know, I think it is pretty clear that this is politics. If you remember, again, when Condoleezza Rice was up for confirmation, she did get grilled. She only, I think, got confirmed by something like 85 votes. 15 Democrats voted against her. But they had legitimate concerns about her and some of the intelligence failures around Iraq. But I do think it's going to be difficult if the president decides to nominate Susan Rice, and we don't know that he will, but it seems that he was certainly coming to her defense in a vigorous way. I don't see necessarily how the Republicans are going to be able to stop that nomination. The Senate is obviously run by Democrats at this point. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee would likely pass that along. So I'm not sure what they could actually do. And I also think they need to be careful about the optics as well. Here's a situation where you have the Republican Party where there are all these questions about their treatment and view of women and their view and treatment of African Americans and minorities. And I'm not sure the specter of Lindsey Graham and John McCain, who I think said that he felt like Susan Rice wasn't very bright. I'm just not sure optically that is a very good position for either of those people to be in and the Republican Party to be in.
We're out of time. I really appreciate it, Raul. We've got to have you back on. You're always a great guest. Thank you, of course, Governor. Really appreciate it. Mark, thanks for stepping out with us. And Nia Malika, of course, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. And coming up, we're going to go live to Capitol Hill, where a Senate intelligence hearing on Benghazi is set to start. It's one one of a couple happening today. None of those, by the way, include General David Petraeus. But we have new word that the general will make an appearance in the next 24 hours.